Sometimes we read or hear stories about spiritual giants, amazing strength, persistence, power in the performance of mitzvos, in the study of Torah, in the accomplishment of amazing, selfless good deeds. And we could be very inspired, but sometimes these stories could be very depressing because we say, well, where do I compare to these great people of the past? And actually, this issue is addressed in this week's portion. Let me share with you a Rashi commentary right at the beginning, where the Torah says Noah was a tzaddik in his generations. So he was a tzaddik. Noah was righteous. I mean, he was so righteous that God saved him and his family, even when the rest of the world was destroyed. Why does the Torah say in his generation he was righteous? So Rashi cites two opinions. Rashi says, well, if he was righteous in his generation of evil people and where the world was so corrupt, how much more so would he be righteous if he lived in a time of where the generations and the people were righteous, where he was surrounded by righteousness? Wow, would he be amazingly great? And others say, well, it's not as complimentary. He was righteous in his generation. I mean, he lived in a generation of where everybody was evil and corrupt. And so compared to them, he was righteous. But if he lived in the time of Abraham, then the way he was now would not be considered anything extraordinary compared to somebody like Abraham. So many of the commentaries ask, why does Rashi even give us the second opinion? The Torah says Noah was righteous. He was a tzaddik, a holy person. So fine, it looks great. Leave it at that. Why do you say, well, others say that if he would have been in the generation of Abraham, then he just would have been an average person. Why even mention that? Rabbi Yitzchak Yaakov Ruderman cites a conversation that Rabbi Chayim Vital, one of the great Kabbalists of all time, had with his Rabbi, the Arizal, in Sfas in the 1500s. Rabbi Chayim Vital asked his teacher, his master, the Arizal, what is the value of the mitzvos that we perform today? I mean, look at the stories in the Talmud and you see the greatness of these people. We don't hold a candle to them. So what value are the mitzvos that we're performing? So the Arizal answered his student. He says, you got to know something. You have to know that a mitzvah is not just measured by the action itself. It's measured by the time, by the generation, by the surrounding, by the world condition. Somebody who performs mitzvos when the world is degenerated, when the world has gone down and somebody still performs mitzvahs, even though if that person is not as righteous as those in the previous generations. But the mitzvahs that he performs are powerful indeed and treasured by God. So Rabbi Ruderman explains that the second opinion of Rashi, the first opinion says that Noah, he was righteous in his generation. Oh, if he would have been, he was righteous even in his generation, how much more so would he be righteous in a generation of righteous people? The second opinion says, Noah was righteous in the time when everyone in his generation was corrupt. Yes, it's true that had he been in the time of Abraham, compared to Abraham, his righteousness wouldn't be able to hold a candle. But he was great, he was amazing, he was spiritually powerful, because even in this difficult generation that he lived in, he rose and connected to God and served God. Says Rabbi Ruderman, this Rashi is teaching us how important it is and how valuable we need to look at the mitzvahs that we perform. Because obviously in this generation, sadly enough, there's so many Jews that have turned away. And the world itself, the moral fiber of the world is certainly has so much degenerated during the past generations. The spiritual nature of the world. So, a Jew who strives to connect to God, strives to perform mitzvos, strives to perform good deeds. Yes, so that Jew may not be as holy and as great as his ancestors, as his predecessors in previous generations. But God looks at the time, and God values the mitzvah that a person performs based on the time that the person performs the mitzvah and based on the environment. So let's keep at it. Let's give it our best. Let's not get depressed when we read stories about great people of the past. Get inspired and strive to do our very best, because God will treasure every mitzvah and every thought to do a mitzvah, because in these times, everything that we do is especially treasured by Hashem. Have a fabulous Shabbos.